Good morning, Philippines. The Philippines has its own methods of construction that are different from Vietnam, certainly different from Canada. And I thought I'd point out some of the structural things that you should consider when building here in the Philippines. So let's to have a look, shall we? Okay, first off, when the Japanese had a massive earthquake, was it in Kyoto or where years ago, and thousands of people died. They found out that the traditional Japanese housing just didn't work because it was typically made of fragile woods, and on top of it was this heavy clay roof, which, when the fragile wood collapsed, this massive roof would fall down on top and kill all the residents. Not a very good idea for an earthquake zone. But in the Philippines, there's construction going on that they're starting to change the building code. I think previously all earthquake structures to be tested had to meet a category 6 or 7, was it? But I think it's up to category 8 now, earthquake. And recent events have had category 6 and close to 7 plus, even off the coast, earthquakes. And the problem is that people aren't building the structures properly in a lot of cases. And that includes commercial buildings as well. Now, first off, if you're building, you should definitely focus on your rebar as the initial thing. This is what's going to tie whatever concrete structure that you're going to put in together. Unless you're building at a block, which I don't recommend, your whole building will be supported by a series of columns and beams that are tied together with rebar. Now, typically, you have a 18, maybe even 16, if it's a single story building, 16 gauge rebar, and I don't recommend that. I recommend you go higher, but it's not only just the metric of the rebar, but also where and what it's made of. You got to make sure you got good quality rebar that's going to hold up, not something fragile. And some of the stuff coming out of China is crap, so it would be nice to have some material testing before you put it in. Now, I didn't do that at the time. I was unaware of it, but I took 20 and 22 rebar and I went up as far as 3 stories. But typically, you're going to have, if I could just draw for you here, your typical column when they pour it. Say that's your column, right? And you're going to have rebar going through this structure inside the column. Now, you want to make sure that you're tying these all together at different levels. And typically that's what most of them do. They tie them across the column and pour it. Now, the problem is the depth of the column. How far down does it go? Now, a few years ago, it was designed at 0.5 meter, which has since been upgraded to about 1 meter, I think it is now. But I would recommend you go 1.5 meters. Don't forget, 1 meter is just 40 inches, just shy of 40 inches. So you got 1.5 meters, that's 60 inches. That's like a 5-foot depth. And if you go to that depth, you're going to be anchored in See, that's the surface level there, and you're anchored in here. But at the base here, you're going to be putting in a pad as well. And your pad, when you put your pad in, this is what your column sits on. You got to make sure you don't just have it sitting there to jiggle about. You're going to have to, when you pour this pad, you're going to have to put rebar. See, your rebar comes in through here, across, right? It comes through here. You're going to want to make sure that you bend it up and bring it up into your column space so that it's tied in as one solid unit. So there's an L-shaped piece of rebar, and not just a foot or two. You should be going a good solid meter right up. So there's a real connection, and it's all wired in, it's all tied in when you do it. So that's number 2. This is number 3 before you get here. This is number 2. And number 1 is, before you even get to the pads, is you should be building between the pads an underground beam that connects the pads. Because even if this is on a solid base, if the whole base moves over and say it goes this way, you're going to split it in, your wall's going to collapse down inside the frame. So you want to frame it up on the bottom in the base. So go to the base of your pad and pour a linear beam underground. I'm talking about a meter and a half depth, and run it at least 30 centimeters, so about a third of a meter or a foot wide, and have it tie in. Again, this is the first thing you're doing. You're going to run this with continuous rebar into this, and if you can bring it right up into the column too, so it's all tied together with a single frame. Now remember, this is different construction, like from Vietnam. In Vietnam, they build the brick walls first, and then they pour the columns in between the bricks, which is kind of a back-assward kind of thing in my view. But anyway, it's a different area. It's not having the same level of earthquake activity that you have in the Philippines. But if with all the shake, rattle, and rolling that goes along here in the Philippines, you want to make sure everything is tied in together at the very base level. If you do this, what will happen is your structure will move as a whole, as a unit. So no matter where the earth decides to shake or how violently, things may get tossed around inside, but the frame itself, you want that to hold together, because that's what's going to dictate whether you survive an earthquake. Now, we just went through a 7.4 earthquake and another one 6.9 last week, and there was literally no structural damage to the building at all. And when I talk about structure, I'm talking about these columns, beams, and posts. Now, within the wall, there's the other thing too you've got is when they're building the brick wall in here, you've got the brick, which is notoriously cheaply done. They mix a lot of clay and crap in it, and I really wasn't pleased with the content of the clay. I sent it back a couple of times, but still, it's hard to find good quality. And anyway, you want to make sure you get good quality brick, hollow block between the different areas so that your cement finishing will adhere to it properly. Because what you're going to get, and we got some of this, and it had really nothing to do with the earthquake, because as the concrete on the face dries and hardens and sets, it shrinks, and as it shrinks, there are some surface cracks that appear, and that may pop through the paint later on. And that's why it's important on the exterior wall that you have a good elastomeric or membrane to protect the water from infiltrating into your bricks and causing more expansion in the joints and attacking your rebar, which is running here every 18 inches. You've got rebar running down through the bricks, tied and all in. But if you get water coming in from the outside, it's going to attack your rebar. The rebar is going to spall and it's going to crack your walls. So that's the other element you want to be aware of. So if you're building in the Philippines, I just came across this brought up by another blogger who's building up in the provinces and spending a bit of money. And I saw his columns popped in, and a lot of times they pour the column in first and after the fact put in the base. Don't do it that way. Get them to trench the whole outer perimeter of the building. Put in your lateral subsurface beams with the rebar, tie them into the frame for your pad, and go up from there. A lot of them are going backwards because they take shortcuts. They go, oh, you want a post there? Fine, we put a post there. And, oh, now you want a pad? Okay, we'll add the pad after the fact. Oh, now you want the beam? And by working backwards, it's counterproductive because it's not tying into the whole structure. So slow down. Do a proper plan of your layout for all your lateral beams, subsurface beams, and make sure they tie in to your pad and your pad ties into your columns. And then from there on up, as you move up the building, you're going to do the same thing for tying them into your rafters and the rest of it. So remember, the structure is supported by the beams and columns, not by the brick. The brick just is superficial. You can consider it on the same level as drywall, although the weight is much heavier. So if you're putting in your interior walls, if you're making them out of concrete too, you got to make sure that you've got a beam under it to support it, because there's only so much weight that a concrete slab will permit. And I suggest you use 20 plus grade rebar. Make sure it's of good quality and tie it close together. At least a minimum of 4 to 6 inches apart to make sure that you've got a good solid strength. It'll cost you more in rebar, but trust me, in the end, when that earthquake comes, as we just had last week, it'll stand you in good stead. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you want to see more, I've got a full year of construction here on my site. You can breeze through them from the planning stage right through to completion and the reveal at the end. So there's 50 weeks of construction. You can pop around and get some ideas and let me know what you think in the comments section below. Thanks. Hopefully this helps. Have a good one. Bye-bye.